sense of what we're expecting. So the three classes are going to be Native American art, history of architecture, and sculpture. So so first we'll just start with Native American art. If you know that you will be taking, or you have to take, you're required to take this class, Native American art, coming this spring, 2021, next semester. Can you raise your hand? Plan to take Native American art. Anybody? All right, good. So let's go to history of architecture. If you're planning on taking that course, you could raise your hand. Anybody here? Okay. And then if you two are planning on taking sculpture in the next semester, you could raise your hand.
This is one, if you need sculpture, you should be raising your hand.
If sculpture, raise your
Not
hand.
offered very often. If it's on your program, put your hand up there so you can count.
Okay. All right. So great. So thanks. That just gives us a little heads up for what might be coming. For sure, these classes haven't been decided on yet, but we're just trying to see kind of the need out there. So, all right. A question? Yes.
What about illustration techniques? I know I need that to graduate.
Okay.
Is that being offered next year?
I don't believe it is being offered next spring, but I guess Bill, I talked to Bill about that. It's a good question.
I don't know when I met Memo, but my experiences with Memo have always been positive. Memo's a wonderful artist and a very generous person who came from Lima, Peru, which is a beautiful city. If you ever get a chance to visit, it's good to see how other people live. I was fortunate to do a study tour with a woman named Kimberly, and we went to Lima and to many of the touristy attractions like Machu Picchu and the Nazca Line in Peru with her. So I have a little bit of appreciation for where Memo comes from initially. Memo came to North Dakota and he told us wonderful stories about why he stayed in North Dakota for 15 years.
Yeah, 15.
Like
Yeah.
that anyway, a long time. But he has an MFA from the University of North Dakota, a bachelor's degree from
Universidad Católica del Perú.
in Peru, and he's a wonderful artist. I hope you enjoy the lessons that he can teach us.
Thank you, Linda. Can you hear me? Can you understand me? It's going to be a little extra tricky now with the mask, but you know, this is a special time and a special context that we are all living. So I'm very thankful to be here. It's always great to come back to Minot. It's always great to work with the faculty here, and I want to show you why I make what I make. I am a full-time studio artist. I am a ceramic artist, mostly sculpture. So I always, every time I do these presentations, that's my main focus, to answer the question why artists make what they do. the inspiration, the ideas behind it. To start, I want to tell you again, I am from Peru. These are the Andes in Peru, the mountains in Peru. I think most of you are familiar with the Incas and Machu Picchu. You know, before the Spaniards came to conquer South America, there were many other civilizations that flourished all around the region, not just in Peru, but Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, Brazil, Mexico. So one of them were the Incas. That was the last civilization before the Spaniards conquered the region. These are the Lascaux lines. Linda mentioned the Nazca lines. This is what the coastline in Peru looks like. It's kind of like a desert. These lines are maybe 2 hours south of Lima, and they're on the ground. You can't see them when you are on ground level. You can only see them when you are, let's say, flying. So there is always this question. And these lines were made like about 2,000 years ago. Obviously, the native Peruvian didn't know how to fly. So there is always that question, why they make them, the purpose of those lines. And these lines are huge, like a football field. When I was growing up in Peru, now I am 45, you guys might be late teens or early 20s. When I was growing up in Peru, mid-80s, all the 90 decades, we have serious troubles in Peru, economical, political, social violence. There were 2 terrorist groups in Peru that they tried to take down the government. It was very common in the 80s, Christmas Eve. Just a few seconds before midnight, we could hear a bomb, and it was one of these terrorist groups bombing power towers, and there would be a huge blackout in the whole city. So some of my memories, childhood memories about Christmas is blackouts and candles. And back home in Peru, we celebrate Christmas actually at midnight, because it kind of represented the exact time or symbolized the time that Jesus was born. So all the families get together at midnight to celebrate Christmas. At the same time, we went through a tough economic crisis. I think you will never experience something like this. Let's say one day you want to buy a loaf of bread, it will be $1. The next day will be $2. The next day will be $3, and so on. It was very dramatic. Many people during that time in Peru migrated to other countries, Argentina, Chile. Some people came to the States, Europe, Spain, Italy. I was very fortunate. My family was middle class. My dad and my mom had stable jobs. We had everything we needed. My brother and sister and I, we went to school. We had proper education. We went to college. So we were very fortunate to have everything we needed. These are 2 of my artistic influences. The Renaissance. I love the work made in the Renaissance, painting, sculptures, especially the work of Michelangelo. And when we grew up in Peru, we study the civilizations that they were before the Spaniards came, the pre-Columbian cultures, and there are many of them that develop in Peru through history. One of them is the Mochica, and they developed in the northern coast of Peru. And these are just two samples of the artifacts, ceramic artifacts that they made. They were amazing potters. My last class when I went to college in Peru was ceramic. And I always say ceramic, there is only one problem with clay, is that you like it too much and you get hooked. So after that class, I knew I wanted to study more about ceramics, and I I knew I had to study abroad. I went into the internet. I started researching about colleges in the States, and I applied to 4 or 5. I got accepted in 2 or 3 of them, and one was UND in Grand Forks, and I came to UND. And those are 2 of my first sculptures when I came to UND. I started kept working with the human figure, the human body as my main canvas. I started working with the idea of the puzzle pieces, individual pieces that make what we are, like person, like people. When I came to UND, it was the first time I was out of Peru. It was a very confusing time for me. Right now I speak decent English, but back then I thought I spoke English, but it wasn't good. It was very hard to communicate. So every day it was kind of like I got headaches because I tried to understand what people say, and it's different to learn English in Peru than coming to the States and listen and trying to catch up what people are saying. Especially people speak they speak faster, and there are so many slangs and shortening some expression. It was a little tough. Then I started working, when I came to UND, it was pretty much the first time I experimented with raku. Raku is a firing technique that you have your piece fire in the kiln, and you open the kiln when it's hot red, like almost 1800 degrees. You pick it up, hot red, and put it in a container. The container has sawdust, newspaper, anything that could start on fire. So you put your piece in the container, and you will see fire and smoke coming off the piece, and then you close it. So when I saw when I saw the flames coming out of my sculpture, and I think it's because I was raised Catholic. It reminded me of, what they tell you if you do something wrong or you commit a sin, that if you keep doing this, you will go to hell. So I thought on combining that firing technique with the piece itself. So I started making demons, very realistic demons, skinny bodies, long tails, but because of the firing process, they were cracking or breaking apart because they couldn't stand the thermic shock. So I was trying to find a form that could stand the stress of the process, and it was either working with, let's say, overweight people, or babies. And I started working with babies, and that's how I started working with my baby devils. Also, the baby devils have a duality that we see pretty much everywhere, women and men, fire and water. The baby devils are supposed to be pure because they are babies, but they have those little horns that make them evil. So they combine the good and evil in the same body. During that time, 2003, 2004, the war in Iraq started, and I thought I should make something about it. I started painting the baby devils with, if they were wearing military camouflage, and I gave them guns. And I set them up as if they are playing hide and seek. But they are not playing hide and seek to find each other, but to kill each other. I continue working with the idea of the baby devil, but now I started in 2011. I stopped painting them with military camouflage, but I am painting them with Peruvian pre-Columbian designs. These are mochica designs created like about 1,500 years ago, and I'm just borrowing them into my ceramic. And I think this is my way to represent some of my background, my Peruvian background. some more examples of the baby devils. These ones, they're holding samurai swords, and the samurai swords are not a random choice. I don't think I've never held a samurai sword. But again, I am from Peru, and most of us are a combination of many races, like Spanish, European, Native. I am a mix of everything. My dad is, let's say, 100% Peruvian. My mom is part Peruvian, part Japanese. My grandpa on my mom's side, he was Japanese, and he migrated to Peru when he was 5 years old, early 20th century. He grew up in Lima, he met my grandma, eventually they have kids, and eventually I was born. So even though I look kind of dark-skinned, Peruvian look like, I am part Japanese. And this is my way to represent my two heritages, the Peruvian with the Peruvian designs and the Japanese with the Japanese samurai swords. I make llamas. I don't make the llamas because I am from Peru or because I like llamas. Both are right answers. I am from Peru and I like llamas, but I want to say more with the llamas when I am using it as part of my artwork. It was maybe 2004, when I was at UND, I went to visit my friend Jessie's farm, and her farm is in the west part of the state, maybe 2 hours south of Minot, in that corner of North Dakota, Montana, and South Dakota. And her dad has, let's say, 300 sheep, and in the middle of the sheep, he has a llama. And he told us the llamas sometimes are better than dogs to protect the sheep against coyotes. Because I think we all have, we have seen llamas, and llamas are very feisty and fearless. So when a llama sees a coyote, they go and chase them. They are fast enough to catch them, and if they do, they kick them, and they can even kill them. So for me, it was quite fascinating to see a llama in the plains. When I think of a llama, it's in the Andes, in the mountains. So that made me wonder why they were here. So somebody brought them here for a purpose, for a reason, and that reminded me that I also came here for a reason. So in that sense, llamas are immigrants, like I am myself. Llamas are not green, they are not red, they are not blue. I use color to represent diversity, like people coming from different places. And when I talk about immigration or mention immigration, I just not mention precisely the immigration happening these days, but through history. I kept working with the idea of immigration, and I made about 50 little clay figurines of representing kids. And I used the bridge that connect Grand Forks to East Grand Forks, two cities in two different states connected by a bridge, separated by a river. So I thought it was kind of the right place to work with the idea of crossing the border. So my kids were crossing the bridge in a way to symbolize that they are migrated to another place. Before I moved from Grand Forks from North Dakota in 2016, I thought I wanted to, I wasn't sure what else to work about the idea of minorities in North Dakota. So I thought if I wanted to represent minorities in Grand Forks or in North Dakota, I should start with myself. So I make a self-portrait. This is my self-portrait. I want these portraits to look powerful, fearless, like gods or goddess from ancient Greek or ancient Roman, those murals that we see when you have been in Europe, you can see them, or through books. So I started to make portraits of real people representing minorities in Grand Forks. I started with myself, I follow up with my friend Todd, and Todd is gay, to represent the LGBT community in Grand Forks. And before I left, I made the portrait of my friend Sarah to represent a powerful, confident woman in Grand Forks. Then I moved to the cities. I moved to St. Paul in 2017. Yeah, it was 2017. It has been almost 3 years since I moved to St. Paul. And when I got there, everything was new. All my friends were in North Dakota. I have a few friends in the cities, but it wasn't the same. I got me thinking about the idea of home, what home is. Every time I go home, Peru will always be home. But every time I go home, if in the last 4 or 5 years doesn't feel the same, I don't have that. I don't feel that strong emotional connection with Peru. I am older. My mom is older, aging. My sister is married, has a kid. My dad died 4 years ago. Every time I go back to Peru, to Lima, I go to the same places I used to provoke nostalgic in myself, but now it doesn't anymore. So it's something strange. And I thought Grand Forks was my second home. I feel very welcome to go to Grand Forks, but I left. And the cities, it's taking me some time to feel part of the community in the cities, to be part of the art. I am trying very hard to get involved in the art community, but it's taking me some time. So when I think of home, I think of when I was growing up in Peru as a little kid. I think all of us have good memories when we grew up, when we were little kids. So when I think of home, it's about memories. When I was 5, 6, 7 years old, growing up in Lima, spending most of my days at my grandma's, playing with my brother and sister and many, many cousins. So my way to represent those memories is representing a sculpture, TV shows that I watched as a little kid. So I started choosing Japanese cartoons from late 70s and early 80s and painting them with my Peruvian designs to make that also to show that connect, to represent my two heritages, the Japanese and the Peruvian. So these sculptures are based on cartoons I watched as a little kid. The same with these two. But then I started changing it a little bit. Instead of being based on a cartoon I watched as a little kid, I started adding elements from the Mochica culture that are still inspired by Japanese animation, but I am adding physical sculptural elements in the body that they are more pre-Columbian. In this one on the right, it has like snakes coming off the shoulders. Those are Mochica snakes. The same with the one in the middle. The snakes are coming from his head. Those are Mochica snakes. And the one on my left is his hair is kind of wavy, but those are Mochica waves. How they're representing the waves in their pottery. So I continue working with this series of memories of home. I was very fortunate that I got the McKnight grant in the cities, and I was able to continue working in this series. I also do pottery. My pottery is also the physical form of the pot is inspired by the Japanese tea bowl. It's mostly geometrical, like a cylinder, but the designs are, again, Peruvian pre-Columbian designs. Plates, bowls, and all these plates it takes me more time to paint the graphics than to actually throw it on the wheel. I also make dogs, tiny dogs, big dogs, and again, I don't make things because I like them or they're cute. These dogs are inspired by my family dog. She died like 7 or 8 years ago. It was a Yorkshire Terrier, but my dogs are lifting their legs on a gun, specifically on the AR-15. I started making my dogs and the AR-15 after the Sandy Hook shooting, and I think it was 2013. I think maybe you were too young, but this guy can break into a elementary school, kindergarten, and he started shooting these little kids. 21, 23 little kids were killed that day, and I think also the teacher. So my dogs it's a political statement about guns violence. Make my tiny llamas. Again, I already told you the story about the llamas. And I can't continue telling you about my artwork if I don't mention what happened this year. We all are living through this time of the pandemic, the coronavirus. When I was during that time, almost February, March, the studio where I would go and work and do my sculptures, it closed for almost a little more than 2 months. So I couldn't work. I couldn't go to any other place. There was no reason to leave my place for work. So I spent most of the time pretty much locked down in my apartment. I had work to do, like painting underglazes on my sculptures, but I spent all day there. There was not much to do besides working, and I started baking. And I used to bake before, like a year, maybe two. I started baking 2 years ago, but I especially took into baking in the last 4 or 5 months, especially sourdough. I got into baking sourdough. I think it was a way to keep busy, motivated, and during that time, I started questioning myself. What is an artist if this artist can make art? And that's what I was going through. What I'm going to do? What will happen? And I think most of you are asking yourself, what is going to happen when all of this is over? Are we going to keep doing what we were doing before? Something will change? How we are going to adapt? And I didn't have any answer. I don't have the answer, but I started baking. I started researching about bread, sourdough, and I got I started my own sourdough. I started baking baguettes, and baguettes is also no random choice. When I also continue an idea of memories, when I was growing up in Peru, one of my dad's favorite breads was baguette. My dad passed away 4 years ago, and I think it's my way to kind of bring those memories back, baking baguettes. And also started baking croissants, and I don't have any meaningful reason for them, but I wanted to find a bread that I could work with my hands. Baguettes, I can shape it, score it, and bake it. The croissants, baking the croissants, the sourdough croissants, it takes about 3 days. The process of baking, the whole process is very similar to ceramic. It's like working with the slabs, laminating the dough with the batter. It's like making a slab with a roller pin. And then you have to cut it and shape it. So it was very, it fit my ceramic skills, my hand building skills. and I got pretty good. I was surprised that I enjoy it so much. I never thought of baking a year ago. My mom and my sister, they kind of laugh when I show them, I bought a KitchenAid mixer, or I bought a KitchenAid food processor. And she kind of they laugh because when I was a young guy like you guys, I was never in the kitchen. I never helped in the kitchen, but now I just want to bake. Baking has become one of my weekend routines. And plan it or not, I started selling my croissants, and I am able to pay my rent with the croissants. During this pandemic, for many, for 2 or 3 months, I didn't know how to start to represent this crisis into my artwork. And I think that was the worst part of the pandemic, that I lost motivation to make art. I lost motivation, I lost creativity. I knew ideas would come, but they were just taking too long for them to appear. So eventually I started making work. This is a commission, and it's a baby devil, a samurai baby devil, but she's wearing a mask to represent, like all of us, we're wearing masks now. And I am going to start making my baby devil's army. There is something I think one of the best part of baking, combining baking with my artwork, is it takes me like 3 or 4 months to make one sculpture from the beginning to end. It's one sculpture in 4 months. Whatever I bake, and the sculpture will last forever. I will die 20, 30 years from now, but the sculpture will outlive us, all of us. It will last forever, hundreds of years, thousands of years. When I am baking the bread, the croissants, is good for 2 or 3 days, and after that, you have to throw it away. And the purpose of baking or making food is obviously eat it. You have to eat it. You are cooking to eat the food and to share it. When I am baking the baguettes or the croissants, I don't care if they pay me. I want people to eat it. I don't mind if I make 2 or 3 dozens. It makes me happy that people eat it. So the process might be similar, but what I learned from baking, it has added to how I see my artwork. So I started making, I'm going to start making my baby devils a little smaller. Some of them are going to have guns, fake guns, with ammunition that they look like croissants. And I'm going to make molds of it. I think you are all familiar with the terracotta army in China. I want to make my own clay army. They won't be that big, maybe 17, 18 inches tall, but I want to make them. I want to make using molds, it will make it faster, easier, and it will be more affordable for everybody to have, for most people to have 1 or 2. This is another of my baby devils. This is all my social media links. I am in Instagram, Facebook, and I have an Etsy store, and there is my website too. So if you have any question, just ask. Yes?
So I guess I have a few questions. The little sculptures that you made of Cerberus and the Minotaur, how big are those?
Oh, they were like this.
Okay. And then what about the start of the baby devils? Are those like decent size?
The first ones?
Yeah, when you started,
Oh, yeah.
how big were
They were like human babies. Yeah.
Oh,
Like, I mean, if they stand up, they will be like 23, 24 inches tall.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I have one more question.
Mhm.
So in the picture where you have the sculptures that were inspired by the Japanese animation, like Rocket Boy, what was the one next to that? Was that from like Gundam or something?
Which one?
It was in the slide with Rocket Boy on our left. At least it looked like Rocket Boy. I think it was that was two more.
That one?
One more maybe? That one. Yeah, so the one on our right.
Oh, that's Messenger.
Okay.
It was like a giant robot, and on top of the head there is an aircraft, and the pilot is a human. So it's a huge robot, and the pilot is controlled by a human on top of his head.
Okay.
Hmm?
That's really neat.
Thank you. Any other question? Yes.
Do you feel like the work is going to continue being the baby devils, or are you ever going to do more of that, the fantasy style stuff?
I kind of hard to tell now. I think the new series with the molds, they combine both the baby devils and the anime in the same figure. But I think I will continue working with the baby devils. The anime, I think, because the idea of home is the purpose of making the sculptures of the anime, maybe after I cannot feel more comfortable where I am, I will stop using it. Because it makes reference to memories, and if those memories are not that important for me in a few years, I will stop using it. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Any more questions?
Have you tried to bake in your kiln?
Bake in my I think it will be it could make it, but I don't think if I will eat it though, because it has some dust and the brick. But I hope this is kind of like, I hope this will come up somewhere, somehow, that after we all pass through this. I mean, for a few months, I thought, okay, my art career might be over. I need to get a job and find something else to do because I need to pay bills. But now that I am baking and I love it, and I see some potential on it, I think I will try to combine both into a physical space. Like eventually, it will be amazing if I can get a studio, which is also a bakery and a gallery. So everything will be baked or cooked from scratch at home, and having openings, receptions, artists showing, and in a funny way, lure the people with croissants to the openings, and they buy and they eat and they buy art. I think it won't happen soon, but I hope sometime in the future.
I know after grad school, you worked for how many years at the North Dakota Museum of Art?
2009 to 2005 years, 5-6 years.
You want to say something about your time there, what you did? And,
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I was very fortunate to get connected to the museum. I was hired as artist in residence, and my main job. Well, when you work in the museum, or mostly for any nonprofit, you have a title, but you do everything. And so I was artist in residence, and my main job was teaching. So I was doing workshops, classes to little kids mostly, and I was going around the state, staying 1 week in small towns and teach art, middle school, high school, elementary, nursing homes, colleges. And also I was working for that was part of the Museum Rural program. So they bring exhibitions to the small towns in North Dakota, and if they wanted, they can also ask for the artist in residence myself to go and do classes. Yeah, and doing classes, summer camps too. Drawings and sculpture classes during the fall or the winter. What else? Working for the auction. Something also that I was also very important for me, that I was very fortunate that the museum sponsored me for my green card. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. The process took 4 or 5 years to get the whole application going, and the museum was very supportive. That's the main reason I am still here. And people ask me, why did you go to North Dakota, especially in the cities? Why North Dakota? Why in Grand Forks? And I hope I am not the exception, but I had a great experience in Grand Forks. It worked out for me. Mm-hmm. Yes.
You said you were a full-time studio artist?
Yes.
Okay, so how often do you have to produce new works?
How often? I am always working, even though if I know I won't sell it. Working as a full-time studio artist during COM is very, it's not a steady income. Won't expect to have a steady paycheck every 2 weeks. Sometimes you don't get money for a couple of months, and then I sell a sculpture, and that keep me going for a few more months. But I am always working, making new work, even though it might not be for a specific event. I need to keep working. I don't stop. Even though small figurines, I just make them and hoping that somebody will buy it. But when you are doing this as a full-time job, you can't stop. And it's very different from working for somebody else. You have to be your own boss. It's not like going to work from 8 to 4 or 8 to 5. You go to work from 8 to 6, 7. Saturday, you have to go to work, you go. Sunday, the same. There's a lot of discipline, and you have to be very productive, very productive.
Do you ever resort to a different medium if you don't have inspiration for a ceramicist piece or anything like that?
I mean, I know I am trying to do pretty much many other medias, but it's mostly just sculpture, ceramic, and I guess painting those designs is very close to painting, to do graphics. So it's a combination. In the sculpture, it's mostly like a combination of different medias now. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about the Ignite Fellowship and the process?
Mm-hmm. When I thought of moving off to the cities, to Minnesota, I thought first, I think it was time for me to leave, to move on, to leave Grand Forks, and challenge myself to do better work. And the cities is much more competitive. There are more artists making very good artwork, but also there are more artist opportunities, more grants, and the McKnight is one of them. The McKnight gives, I think it's $25,000 to 2 artists in each media, like printmaking, painting, photographs, photography, some dance, poetry, all kind of arts, fine arts, writing, poetry. And I applied to that grant the first year, in 2018. I didn't get it. But then I thought, okay, next year I have to do, I started working more in those sculptures of the memories of home. And I thought it was much stronger work. And the next year, in 2019, I got the Magnite. And as a matter of fact, if it wasn't for the Magnite and another grant I got from the city, it would be a very tough time for me during the pandemic, because most of the art events have been canceled or postponed or online. So it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. And I feel very fortunate to come here to come for the opening reception of the show at the Northwest Art Gallery and to have a lecture in person, because I don't think it will happen in the cities.
What are you going to bake when you get home?
I want to bake more croissants, but I don't want to sound like a sourdough geek. But you know, when you are making sourdough, it's about how the time you proof it. You know, when you let the dough ferment. So when it's very warm in the summer, everything ferments much faster, so it rises much faster. So what in summer might take me like 12 hours, in the winter might take me 16, 17 hours. But you can also play around the recipe, because if you have more sourdough in your dough, it will ferment faster. So right now I'm using from 20 to 30% sourdough starter in my dough, but I know in the winter I might need more, that 30%, so I will start experimenting with 40% and let it proof 12, 14 hours overnight. Something I appreciate of the sourdough and is that when I was doing my research of bread, I found out that basically bread is supposedly to be only water, salt, flour, and yeast. And what we buy in the grocery store, no bakers, no local bakeries, the grocery store, if you see the label, you will see like 20 ingredients. And some of them will be flour and water, but most of those ingredients are not very good for your body. And most of them are just in the bread to keep it longer on the shelf. So there's always that idea that gluten is bad for your body, and bread is basically gluten. But if you're eating a sourdough bread, because the long fermentation, it's about the fermentation. The longer the fermentation, until a limit, it will make the gluten more digestible for your body and more beneficial. Gluten is a protein, and if you eat it the right way, it's supposed to be beneficial for your body. But if you don't let it ferment, it's very tough for your body to digest. And that's why we got sick, or we have people with gluten intolerance. But then I heard that the same people that they think they are gluten intolerant, they eat sourdough bread or European or bread when they are traveling in Europe, and they eat sourdough bread in Europe, they are fine. They are fine. And you know, we have been eating bread for thousands of years. It's a stable food for us. And then in the last 10, 20 years, has been an issue. I think I am not a scientist, but I want to keep eating bread, but sourdough bread. Do you guys have any local bakery here, like sourdough baker? Yeah? Mhm.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you guys.
Everybody have a good weekend. We'll get some salad. Mother started.